Robert Spencer here for Jihad Watch, a program of the David Horowitz Freedom Center and for the Center for Security Policy, here with more of the truth about the notorious Council on American-Islamic Relations, that is, CAIR. Belying its claims to reject and repudiate terrorism, CAIR has a long record of opposing counter-terror initiatives. Since its founding, CAIR has been consistent in opposing virtually every counter-terror measure ever implemented or proposed, even the most innocuous. It strenuously objected to a 2007 Los Angeles Police Department plan simply to map Muslim communities. The program was ultimately discarded. CAIR was also in the forefront of opposition to a New York Police Department program conducting lawful surveillance of Muslim communities. That program, too, was ultimately abandoned. For years, CAIR spearheaded opposition to the Patriot Act, and in 2011, CAIR was one of the 57 Muslim and South Asian organizations that wrote to Barack Obama's counterterrorism czar and current CIA chief, John Brennan, demanding that counterterror training materials be purged of all mention of Islam and jihad, effectively leaving FBI agents and other officials ignorant about the motives and goals of jihad terrorists. On the other hand, there is no evidence of CAIR ever vocally supporting any counter-terror initiative or encouraging other Muslims to do so. A further clue to CAIR's true nature is the fact that numerous CAIR employees have been arrested or deported on terrorism or other national security-related offenses. Ghassan Elashi was the founder of CAIR's Dallas office. He was convicted and sentenced to 65 years in prison for 10 counts of conspiracy to provide and the provision of material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization, 11 counts of conspiracy to provide and the provision of funds, goods, and services to a specially designated terrorist, and 10 counts of conspiracy to commit and the commission of money laundering, along with 1 count of conspiracy to impede and impair the IRS, and 1 additional count of filing a false tax return. Randall, or Ismail, Royer, was a CAIR communications specialist. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison for firearms and explosive charges and for assisting in recruiting fighters for Lashkar-e-Taiba, the terrorist group that carried out the Mumbai massacre in India. Bassam Khafagi was CAIR's community affairs director. Khafagi was sentenced to 10 months in prison and deported for his role in a material support for terrorism scheme involving an Islamic charity. Nabil Sadoun was a CAIR vice chairman who was deported from the United States for failing to disclose an association with the Hamas-linked United Association for Studies and Research, which was founded by the openly identified Hamas leader Musa Abu Marzouk. Muthana al-Hanoudi, executive director of CAIR Michigan, was sentenced to a year in prison for violating sanctions against the Iraqi government for having received oil contracts as payment for services to Iraqi intelligence. Abdurrahman Alamoudi was CAIR Northern Virginia's executive director and an extremely influential moderate Muslim in Washington for many years. He turned out to be also an al-Qaeda financier and was convicted and sentenced to 23 years in prison. Rabi Haddad, a former CAIR fundraiser, was deported for a visa violation. The immigration judge ruled that Haddad was a threat to national security, in part due to his role as chairman of the Global Relief Foundation, which was a charity linked to financing al-Qaeda. CAIR played a role in directing funds to the Global Relief Foundation after 9/11. What's more, CAIR officials have made statements in support of convicted killers and jihad terrorists. While routinely denouncing foes of jihad terror, CAIR officials have a long track record of public statements in support of terrorist organizations, convicted terrorists, and other convicted violent criminals. Terrorists and convicted killers publicly defended by CAIR include Alamoudi, who not only was an al-Qaeda financier, but was also involved in an assassination plot against the Saudi crown prince. CAIR officials have also defended Sami al-Arian, who after years of proclaiming his innocence, admitted to being a Palestinian Islamic Jihad organizer. Likewise defended by CAIR officials was Jamil Abdullah Amin, who was convicted of murdering 1 Georgia sheriff's deputy and wounding another. Other jihadis defended by CAIR include the blind sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, who was the ringleader of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, and Musa Abu Marzouk, who, as we have seen, was the deputy chairman of Hamas. It will come as no surprise that after all this, that CAIR has received foreign funds in possible violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act from organizations linked to terrorism. Despite billing itself as an organization working on behalf of American Muslims, in reality CAIR has received millions of dollars in funding from foreign governments and foreign organizations, including the World Assembly of Muslim Youth and the World Muslim League, both of which have a history of support for terrorism and are linked to the Saudi government. From its founding in 1994 up until March 17, 2010, CAIR is believed to have received at least $2,792,203 in contributions, income, and money from foreign principals in the form of 11 distinct transactions, and to have received a $2,106,251 mortgage loan from a foreign principal for its Washington, D.C. headquarters, and to have secured another $54,500,000 in pledges from foreign entities. Most people believe that CAIR is a single tax-deductible 501c3 nonprofit organization, but in fact this is not the case. CAIR is actually a series of interlocking nonprofit and for-profit corporations, several of which have gone under a series of confusing name changes. On the nonprofit side, CAIR identifies, or has identified itself, as the Council on American-Islamic Relations, as well as the Council on American-Islamic Relations Action Network, the Council on American-Islamic Relations Foundation, and the nondescript Washington Trust Foundation, or WTF. Additionally, CAIR has maintained substantial real estate holdings it controls under the names Zahara Investment Corporation and the Greater Washington LLC of Delaware, which is a limited liability corporation wholly owned by CAIR. CAIR's Byzantine organizational structure is apparently so confusing that even its own executive director, Jihad Watch, claims that he does not understand how the system works. CAIR has also repeatedly failed to properly maintain the legal standing of its various organizations and has failed to file tax forms, which has resulted in having its corporate statuses revoked. Government and media leaders who still have contact with CAIR should decisively repudiate this unsavory organization. I'm Robert Spencer for Jihad Watch.